Good evening and welcome to Roundtable. Today we welcome to Roundtable Gill Westaway. She is the Country Director of British Council, Sri Lanka. Good evening, Gill.
Good evening.
Now today is we are happy to have you at the Roundtable, and we would like to find out your journey to Sri Lanka. How did it all start?
Well, when I graduated from university in modern languages, I decided that I wanted to take up teaching English. So I began teaching English in different countries around Europe. I then went to Latin America, and in Latin America, in Colombia, I had my first job with the British Council as an English teacher.
So that was in 1983, I guess.
1982, yes. So don't start trying to guess how old I am. And then the British Council employed me. They then gave me a scholarship to do my master's degree in the University of London. And I then went on to join the British Council in 1985 as a career member of staff. I developed IELTS. We can talk a little bit about that later.
Of course.
And I was then posted overseas 20 years ago and took up a post in Kenya. After 4 years in Kenya, I moved to Indonesia. I worked on various different projects with a focus on language and education in Indonesia. And I then moved to the Philippines, where I became country director for the first time. And then nearly 4 years ago, I moved to Sri Lanka to continue my career. So that's my journey, really.
That's your journey to Sri Lanka.
Yes.
So quite a bit of travel and quite a bit of experience in the British Council itself and in English training and so on. So now what you referred to, that is your contribution to the development of the International English Language Testing System, IELTS. That is actually significant because there are many students in Sri Lanka also sitting for this IELTS exam. And as a person who sort of initiated it, what was your experience and how did it actually came into the picture?
Well, IELTS was really born in the late 80s from a previous test, which was called ELTS, English Language Testing Service. And its primary function in those days was to assess the proficiency of English for those wanting to study in the medium of English. That was its primary purpose. Since then, it's used for all sorts of other purposes as well. But we felt that it was very important to move ahead with the development of a new test, which brought together testing specialists in the UK with testing specialists in Australia to develop what then became known as IELTS. And I think one of our challenges was to produce a test which had high validity and high reliability across the 4 skills, because I think we were under a lot of pressure to produce a new test which was easier to administer, cheaper, quicker, more practical. And it was suggested that maybe we drop the speaking test. But we resisted that temptation very firmly, because we felt that if you drop a speaking test from the mode of assessment, then you're sending out the message to teachers and learners that speaking is not important. And we know that there is a very strong correlation between the way a test is constructed and the methodology that is then encouraged in the classroom. It's known as the backwash or the washback effect. So we resisted that temptation very firmly. We wanted to keep the speaking test as a very important component of the test, to encourage teachers all over the world to really focus on the speaking skill and the listening skill alongside the reading and writing, in the recognition too that if you were testing English for academic purposes, that you needed to assess all skills. People who are going into a university to study, they need, of course, to be able to read in English. They need to be able to write their academic assignments, but they also need to be able to understand their lecturers and their seminar leaders, and they need to be able to interact in tutorials and seminars and workshops, because I think in the Western context, that academic interaction is absolutely crucial to a successful academic career.
So now, Jill, this experience is, I think, crucial for Sri Lanka, especially at a stage like this, because last year was also declared as the year of English and IT. And there is a presidential initiative in picture as well, which I'll come to later. But right now, what I wanted to ask you is, as a sort of a person who has developed a test for English speaking people, your experience, how can Sri Lanka make use of that and the British Council, along with the British Council, to actually pass this knowledge to students to become better communicators in English?
Well, I think what lies at the heart of our methodology is to make English seen as very much as a tool of communication. It's not something abstract, something alien. It's something which is useful to help human beings communicate with one another. And so the way in which we teach English in our own centres, and the way in which we impart knowledge to teachers through our teacher training courses, is very much putting an emphasis on language as communication. We favour a methodology which is very interactive. The teacher doesn't stand at the front and talk. The teacher is the facilitator. The teacher is someone who sets up interesting, motivating situations in which the students can interact with the teacher and with one another. So it's fun. I think if you talk to students who've been in our classrooms, they always say that they enjoy their classes, that it's fun, that they're motivated, that for the first time they understand how they can use English in a communicative way to actually get their message across.
So when you say use English in a communicative way, you mean to say it's more interactive, is it?
Yes, it's more interactive, and it's, I mean, even, for example, if you're setting someone a writing task, you don't set someone an essay. I remember when I was at school, my teachers used to set me essay topics like my school holidays. And I used to sit there scratching my head wondering what I was going to write, because there was no indication of who my audience was, why I was writing it. Whereas if you're writing in a communicative way, you are guided as to why you're writing, who you're writing for, what kind of register you're going to use, what the appropriate tone will be, and you're writing for a purpose.
So basically you're given a context.
Yes.
And you feel it's a more sort of a real life experience than having to just write what you have been just dictated to write.
That's right.
So is that a method that you also use in rural areas? Because sometimes if you take Colombo and the suburbs, the level of usage of English, if you say, might be more comparatively. But British Council also does teacher training in rural areas. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah, we have a number of programs running. One notable program is run in conjunction with the Ministry of Education and the Council for Business with Britain, or CBB, and they have espoused upgrading of English language skills as their CSR project. So they support us in our work. HSBC has been one of the big sponsors, but many of the member companies of CBB have been behind us. And so we take English out to teachers in the rural areas. And yes, we do follow the same interactive methodology, because we find that many of those teachers in the rural areas, they've actually got a lot of knowledge about the English language, but they lack confidence because they're maybe not using English every day. And so we help to train them in such a way to give them confidence to interact with the students, to run their lessons entirely in English, and to again adopt games, group work, interactive situations, contextualized learning, so that the students are really motivated to learn. And we take the supporters from the business community